We're live. This is happening. It's official.
It's
And
real.
it's real. No tech hiccups 10 seconds in, which is great.
Yet.
Yet, yeah. And I will mention this computer I'm running this on is a 2014 MacBook Pro, and the fan inside is just going crazy right now. So hopefully that will hold up and it will last throughout this whole thing, but we'll see.
Awesome.
But before we jump in, I want to say just in general, episode one, I'm very excited to kick this off with what I think is going to be an amazing episode of this podcast. So first, Jack, of course we know each other, decently well, but I'm going to just start. Go ahead and give a little intro, a quick elevator pitch of yourself, or however you want to phrase it, but just introduce yourself a little bit.
Sure thing. Yeah. Before we get going, definitely thanks for having me on the pod. It's really fun to help you kickstart this thing, and I'm excited to see where it goes. In terms of me, I guess I'll kind of start at the beginning. As you know, grew up just outside of St. Louis in the suburb called Kirkwood. Went to high school there and everything. Grew up playing baseball, running cross country. Fitness was always a big part of growing up for me, and kind of I think fortunately I had parents who really promoted kind of a mentality of continuous development. So that kind of was ingrained in me from an early stage. Um, Ended up going to the University of Alabama, where I studied finance, mathematics, and management. Um, I learned a lot there. I got to say, I wish I would have learned a little more school there, but I I did learn a lot of things outside of school. I always say like undergrad ends up sometimes not being about learning content. It ends up being more about like learning how to be on your own and learning how to look after yourself and do your chores and build relationships with others, and then of course have fun. And I had plenty of fun at the University of Alabama. Summer of 2020, I had my first sort of experience in the professional world, interning at Walmart's home office in Bentonville, Arkansas. And of course, that was summer of 2020, so that was a remote internship. So it was really cool to kind of have my entry to the corporate world in such a crazy, dynamic, uncertain time, and watch the giant machine that is Walmart figure out how to run an intern program of over 400 interns remotely. And um, that summer, I took on a merch ops. So basically, um, you have your merchandising organization within Walmart, and the merch ops subset of that is focused on um, mostly like data analytics and how can we provide data driven insights to support merchandising decision making. That was a really cool summer, and then I liked it so much that I decided to run it back the next year, summer of 2021. I did want to kind of round out my experience, so instead of doing another internship on the merch ops side, I did an internship on the merchandising side of things. So that's more like your general business knowledge. I was kind of in like a product or project management type of role that summer. That's where I really started to learn about how to communicate effectively across functional groups, how to lead teams without necessarily a position of authority, like kind of even from the bottom of the totem pole, like how can you be a leader and how can you inspire others to take action on a project. And then went back and finished up my degree at Alabama the following year. I took on a store job at a Walmart store, really high volume, complex store in a very low income area for I think yeah like 5 or 6 months before heading to the role where I'm in now. Um, and now I'm in a 12-month rotational program at Walmart that takes me through. I've gone through a rotation in what's called merch foundations, and then I went through a rotation in planning. So that's on the merch ops side, like very data heavy, forecasting demand and sales, things like that. Um, then I did a rotation in private brands, so that's working with all of Walmart's exclusively owned brands, like if you know like Mainstays or Great Value or things like that. So working on that team and um, learned a lot about like trend analysis, product life cycles. I learned about Walmart's process calendar, which is basically how we manage tasks and keep everyone accountable and making sure the right things get done at the right time by the right people. So learned a lot there, and then now I'm in the last rotation of that program, in a replenishment rotation. So that's back on the merch op side of things, but it deals much more with supply chain and making sure our stores have the inventory that they need at the right time and helping support any issues that come up there. And then I'll be converting into what's called an associate merchant role, which is basically a buying role for Walmart. So they'll give me a category here within the next few weeks actually to run. And they in that role they kind of say you're like, they call it like the CEO of your desk. So you have a replenishment manager, a planning manager, and then a private brands counterpart that you work with to basically manage the P&L of that business, whatever it may be. So like whether it could be like the mops and brooms desk, it could be like the coffee maker's desk, it could be anything really, wherever they assign me, and then
Yeah.
I'll work for that team. And it's been an awesome experience just because traditionally at Walmart, when you graduate, they just throw you right into that associate merchant role, um, and you really get into the minutia and the detail of whatever desk that they put you on right away. But it's been so cool this last year with this program because I've had a lot of free time to not only network but kind of explore my passions in and outside of Walmart and figure out what are some areas within the business that I think I could add value. Um, and that's kind of led me to, as you know, some of the AI work that I've been doing. So I know that was probably longer than a short intro, but wanted to kind of give the full picture of where I started and how I got where I am now.
Yeah, no, that's a great background. And I'm curious, you mentioned you started at Walmart 2020, which was a crazy time. But what initially drew you to Walmart? Was it a recruiter on campus that led you that direction? Was it just random Google search? What initially led you there?
Yeah. So it was a campus recruiter type situation. It was like I believe they had like a desk at some fair or some event or something like that, and I talked to them and started corresponding with that recruiter. And actually, my aunt and my uncle both live in Rogers, Arkansas, which is actually like halfway between where I live now, Fayetteville, and where the office is in Bentonville. And my uncle works for Tyson. He's a digital marketing director for them. And then my aunt works for Walmart and has for the last 20 some years. So that was obviously an influence, and I knew she was super fulfilled and happy with her job there, and so I guess it was a multitude of factors. But kind of once I got my foot in the door and had that first internship, I I really started to enjoy the culture that Walmart was trying to build, and I kind of bought in. I kind of drank the Kool-Aid and bought into the mission of like they service such a massive customer base, and if you think about like if you can negotiate down the cost of some type of apple down 15 cents per pound or whatever it is, it seems like, oh, big deal, big whoop, but it's like, you know, 15 cents per apple times however many customers we service on an annual basis
Right.
times however many apples we sell, and that quickly adds up. And so I was really attracted by the opportunity to come in on the ground floor and have the chance to make like really dramatic dollar impacts, and as well as just impacting a huge amount of customers and associates worldwide.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine the experience of just the work you're doing, but also just seeing how that corporate engine of literally the biggest company out, I mean the Fortune number one company, how they're operating behind the scenes would be on its own a unique experience, no matter what role you're in. So I think that's awesome. I think that's really cool, and I'm surprised I haven't heard more about Walmart stuff. Just being at Missouri State here in Springfield, it's decently close to Rogers and Bentonville down there, and I haven't had that same experience with campus recruiters, talking about the Walmart stuff. So I was
I
just
do know that
curious.
they're pretty selective about the schools that they recruit from. It's a pretty limited list, and also Walmart. I mean, as time goes on, they of course do recruit from schools, but it's the company as a whole is has definitely shifted its like hiring and internal promotion strategy because they're trying to bring more folks direct out of stores into the home office type of environment. Because I think traditionally there's been at least the perception of kind of a gap there in career opportunities, and I think the company's been making a lot of strides to try to cut that down and try to show that the store associate like, hey, if you work hard, you can. There is no ceiling to where your career can go here.
Yeah, that's awesome, and they have the hands-on experience anyways with how Walmart operates. So that's really neat.
A
That's
hundred
cool.
percent. I mean, because historically, right, um, you have your store associate and your home office associate, and maybe there could have been tensions in the past, whether they were, unfounded or true or not. There could have been kind of just a gap between home office and stores. And I mean, I can't like name names or anything, but there's definitely been hires at Walmart home office that have never worked in a Walmart store, or maybe they weren't even Walmart customers, so they come into a position where they're making huge decisions on something they don't really know and understand.
Right.
And I think the company's really trying to do a lot to try to fix that.
Yeah, and I would have to imagine, not knowing, that would be a situation with plenty of different companies, all across the spectrum, no matter where it is. I would think hiring from inside at actual locations, any store that's set up in a similar way, where there's the locations and people work in those locations. Like I said, they have the knowledge, so I would think they would have that knowledge to make a bit more informed decisions, as opposed to somebody that maybe has just been in a lecture hall for the past few years and doesn't quite know how that works. So yeah, that's awesome.
100%. Yeah, there's like an analogy of like I forget who told me this, but somebody who works at Walmart told me that it's like he gave me this analogy of you have a like a water testing plant at the top of a mountain, and then that's where they test the quality of the water, and that's where they make big decisions about what they're going to filter in and out of the water. And then once that happens, it flows down the whole mountain down this river, right? And who knows what pollutants get in there, who knows and it's like an analogy for supply chain and everything that happens between home office and stores, right? And
Yeah,
then the conclusion of the analogy is like you have this village at the bottom of the mountain, which is supposed to be the stores, right? And it's like that's the water the people are actually drinking. And so like the more you can do to build touch points and connection between that water testing facility at the top of the mountain and your village at the bottom of the mountain, the higher likelihood obviously you're going to have that what you're outputting is a clean um, enjoyable experience for everyone involved down in the village.
yeah, that's a good analogy, because that,
I
that that
loved
makes
it.
sense to me. That's great. I'm curious to talk with you, and honestly more let you talk, but with your knowledge and interest in everything AI related, because I know I I follow your LinkedIn posts. Anybody listening needs to follow Jack on LinkedIn, because he posts some very informative content about all things AI and artificial intelligence. But what kind of started your interest there? Was it things at Walmart? Is that kind of what initiated, or was it just kind of you identified that this is gonna, be significant in the future, and you just wanted to take more of an interest in it? Just how did that all start for you?
Hmm, that's a really good question. First of all, thanks for the plug, and definitely, if you
Yeah,
are listening, feel free to give me a follow on um, LinkedIn or Twitter,
Twitter, yeah,
or any of the socials. I'm sure if we have once we share out this video, I'm sure we could include socials in the description or whatever. But
definitely.
um, I'm trying to think of a of the most true answer I can possibly give to this question, but I mean, I've always had a little bit of tech nerd in me. I've always had some sci-fi nerd in me. Ever since I was a kid, who knows why? And I've always been the kid that was like googling stuff about outer space or whatever, and like watching YouTube videos on like robots or whatever. Um, and so I'm not sure exactly where or when I was introduced to the idea of generative AI and kind of its potential use cases in and outside of the workforce. Um, but definitely working with Walmart, they definitely encourage like staying up to date on latest trends and things that are happening around the world. And so, and obviously, once you get out of school and you enter the workforce, you have your focus kind of shifts a little bit, and you're starting to think about like how can you position yourself to add the most value and have the most impact in the world. And I think just as the Chat GPT stuff has kind of come to light over the last 3 to 6 months, um, whether it was through social media or whatever it was, YouTube, etc. Um, I kind of just developed a passion for it and just decided that whatever new development came out, I was going to stay on top of it and try to educate myself as best as I could. Um, and then I think the moment where I decided that this was a massive thing that I wanted to at least partially, and I haven't 100% committed to my full life dedicating to this sort of technology, but I at least decided I wanted it to be a very big part of what I do. Is I heard a 60 Minutes interview with Google's CEO where he said that the next generation of AI development would have a greater impact on the course of humankind than the discoveries of fire and electricity. And it's like me sitting here as a 23-year-old hearing the CEO of Google say that. I mean, of course, he's biased because Google has a ton of development with AI, but CEO of Google is not going to go on 60 Minutes and say that if he doesn't believe it. And that was the moment for me where I was just like, wow. Um, and then it didn't help when I went into ChatGPT and I asked it to forecast out by decade from now until 2100 what the relationship between AI and humans would look like, um, what the percentage of humans would be by decade that are AI enhanced, and then as well as what else did I ask it? I asked it to estimate the ratio of global digital to biological compute. So like how much in total, like aggregate computation, like whether it's through a brain or through a computer, the ratio of that that's coming from artificial sources versus humans. And I think it was like 2030, it estimated like 10 to 1 digital to biological. And by 2100, it was like 5,000 to 1 or something like that. And I was just thinking, like, I would be a fool not to jump all over this, and because I think it's going to get really incomprehensible really quickly.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of researchers, like I just saw something the other day that estimates that basically there's this idea of like artificial general intelligence, or you also hear the word like technological singularity, and that's theoretically the point where AI becomes I guess, long story short, the AI systems become better at improving themselves than humans are at improving them. So essentially, they become self sufficient right at
Right.
that point, and very quickly they will become, at least in all practical sense, like they'll become equal to humans um, on an intelligence level. And what I saw the other day is that once that point happens, it'll take 4 years on it's an estimate, but 4 years for those artificial intelligence systems to double their intelligence, and then every doubling from that point forward will take half the time. So after 4 years, it'll be double. After 6 years, it'll be 4x. 7 years, it'll be 8x, and so on and so on. And you
Yeah.
can very quickly see how, like, 8 years down the line, after that point, it could literally get to a point where these things are like approaching infinity, literally times intelligent as we are. And so I'm just trying to figure out like how can I play in this, and how can I serve a purpose in the best way to try to make sure that I keep going back to this analogy that like if you picture the world like a wave like this, right? Um, what AI is going to do is it's going to increase the magnitude of that wave. So instead of being like this, it's going to be like this. And in this analogy, the high points of that wave are what is possible that is good, and then the low points of that wave are what is possible that is evil, right? So it's going to expand what is possible that is good. It's going to expand what is possible that is evil. Like people always say, like AI is going to just like become smarter than us and then just like kill all the humans, and like, well, that's like a easy idea to entertain. Like the technology itself isn't good or evil. It's how we program it, and it's how we train it, and it's what sort of regulations and ethical considerations we're willing to input on the front end before it gets to a point where it's out of our control.
Sure.
Um, and so like I'm when I talk about that analogy, I always say to people like I think that we have a responsibility to try to figure out, on that wave, how can we put a floor, how with regulation or public awareness or whatever it may be, how can we put a floor on that negative side of the technology, right? Like how can we limit what is possible that is evil from this? And that's like very central, I'd say, to kind of my mission going forward.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point with the floor, just because to me, with my limited knowledge of all things artificial intelligence, it kind of feels like the Wild West right now in terms of, different startups are developing new ways to implement it and building their own tools, and there's a ton of them out there just that do different things. And so it's, the Wild West, I would say, didn't have that floor, and I would imagine this is going to be kind of a similar deal where you're saying whether it's policies or regulations, whatever that needs to be, if we can put that in place, this is going to be a tool that can be used for incredible amounts of good and incredible amounts of advancement in everything in a positive way. So I think you've got some good analogies. These are two analogies so far that I'm impressed with. I
Analogy count too. We'll keep it going.
Yeah, keep a tab up in the corner. But I think yeah, I think you're spot on with that, and I think your commitment to recognizing this is the future. How am I going to play a role in that? I think I have a similar thought is because when I initially started looking into it and realizing what ChatGPT did and all that stuff, over the past few months and kind of the big craze that's been going on about it online, that was my biggest question is, how are humans going to play a role in this 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road? And it's, you get to that point where you're like, am what I do right now, is that going to be obsolete at some point? And I started thinking about that and I realized, what I'm doing right now, what I what I would have been doing 5 years prior is now obsolete. Just because of technology is already moving at such a fast pace that things have already been moving that fast. I do think AI is just going to speed that up, and everything's going to, like you were saying, that wave's going to get even bigger. But I think there's almost a fear now out there of like, I'm not going to have a job. Robots are going to do everything, and this very general like panic mode of a lack of understanding of how exactly it's going to be implemented. And I'm not saying that I know, because of course I don't. I don't know anything about this stuff.
And neither
But
do I, brother, honestly. Like I know what I know, but in
yeah,
terms of the grand scheme of things, we're both clueless.
right.
And but like what I always hear, I don't know if you've had the same experience, but I always hear like if I bring if I bring up some AI development or something that I hear on the news or something like that with a coworker or a friend or a family member or whatever, I hear a lot of like, oh, like all that stuff, it scares me. It just makes my head
Yes.
hurt. Like I don't want to talk about that. And I'm like that just frustrates the heck out of me, man.
Yeah.
There's nothing more frustrating to me because it's like you were talking about, like it's the Wild West, and like Pandora's box is open
Yep.
already, right? And
Yep.
it's like it's like whether you like it or not, it's coming. And so to those people, I tell them, like, if that's your stance, like if you're terrified and like you're concerned with the ethics implications and data sensitivity and privacy, and like that's awesome, then like go out there and get educated and learn everything that you can and then take a dramatic stance against it. Like that would be awesome. The space needs that
Yeah.
100%. It's like be that person, but like it's not enough to be like, oh, that's scary, so I'm just gonna like keep living the same life that I'm living and just like hope it all works out.
Yeah. No,
You know,
yeah. Well,
like it.
I would
Ugh.
imagine it's similar. Of course, I don't know, and we're the same age, so I wasn't alive to know. But with internet and just that whole introduction of internet, I would have to imagine there were plenty of people that had a similar reaction. They're like, "Oh, that scares me. I don't want to get involved with that." 25, 20ish years later, here we are. I mean, I don't operate a moment of my day that doesn't utilize the internet. I can only imagine it's going to be a similar experience, if not on a way bigger scale.
And, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot you can go into with that, and like not just the internet, but really like every technological innovation that's happened over the last really forever. Like if you look at if you look at like the Industrial Revolution, like it's not like that was just something that came out of nowhere. Like folks knew it was coming, governments knew it was coming, regulatory bodies knew it was coming, and like it had so many dramatic positive effects. Obviously, like the positive amplitude of the wave, right? But then
Sure.
like what did we do on the forefront to limit the negative side? And like 60, 70, 80 years later, like we're suffering environmental consequences, etc., from
Yep.
all of the mistakes we made then. And then you have the internet, which is like I kind of think about like industrial. I think like in terms of major technological economic revolutions, I think of like first it's like the Paleo age where it was like hunter gatherer, and then the first big innovation was where we moved into like what's known as like the Neolithic age, which is farming. Um, the next big one would be industrial revolution, then the internet, and then I think AI is next. And so you had that with the industrial revolution, and then with the internet, it's like I'm a big believer that because we didn't get out in front of social media, for example, I think that we're facing a mental health crisis partially because of failure to get out in front of that. Um, and I'm seeing time and time again how we're not getting ahead and seeing out in front of the potential negative consequences of technology. But what excites me about right now is that I think the Joe Schmoes of the world, like the yous and me's, and like the people that are 20 years old, whatever, or even younger, who really 10 years ago or even less wouldn't have had that strong of a voice. It's like anybody can be a creator and anyone can have a voice right now if they work hard enough. Um, and so I think we have an opportunity here if there's enough collaboration and enough progress made now in the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, to where we could at least do the best that we can to get out in front of this thing and try to limit, as I say, the negative effects of what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, and I could not agree with you more. I mean, look at what we're doing right now. I mean, some sort of a platform just to talk about ideas. Even if
Mhm.
two people see this thing, that's fine. But we have the
Mhm.
opportunity now to where we can sit down, have this conversation, record it, put it out there, and people can listen to this and listen to what our thoughts are and what our stances are. And I think with your comment there on social media and our struggle to get ahead of it and the mental health crisis that's going on, that I yes, I totally agree with that. And I think hopefully from that lessons are learned, and the people that can have a major impact on that, which as you mentioned, it's getting to the point where that can be just about anyone. As we move further into this whole AI thing, it we're able to respond better and prepare better for what's coming. And like you're saying, whenever you start that conversation with someone and they say, "Oh, it scares me. Oh, I don't want to get involved." Well, that's the same thing they said about social media that then got us where we are now. So history really does repeat itself. I think it really is a repeating pattern.
100%,
Um,
unless you do something about it.
yeah, yeah. You know what's also interesting? You just reminded me of this. I had a weird thought the other day. There's a generation of people like like for example, you and me. We don't know what life is like without internet. We don't. We have no idea what that was like. There's a window of people, and it's a big window. There's a lot of people at this age gap, but that know what life was like pre-internet and then post-internet, today's environment. At a certain point, those people will no longer be here, and we will only have post internet people on this planet. Just that idea is so bizarre to me because I don't know what life was like pre-internet. Was it that different? I don't know, but when I talk to my parents or anyone that's older and they say, "Yeah, I had to go to the library in college and read books," or even just, "Yeah, there were a few computers on campus, but there were these huge things and I didn't really know." Just the difference now is crazy. I could not leave my apartment. My classes are online, and it's just a totally different world. And I
You can get all
it's
your groceries delivered through
yeah,
Walmart Plus.
there, nice plug for Walmart there. Walmart Plus, get your groceries through Walmart Plus. But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's so different, and just the idea that there's gonna be nobody left on this planet that knows what pre-internet life was like is crazy. That's
Oh,
just a weird
100%.
weird
100%.
thought.
And then even our generation, I think we were how I mean, I like to say that I was fortunate to be born in this time period, but you could definitely spin it both ways. But it's the amount of transition in our life from, I mean, when we were born, it was like .com bubble time, and then fast forward 7 or 8 years, and all of a sudden, half of America or whatever it was has an iPhone in their pocket, and now we're here only 15 years later after that, and we're at a point where it's like I think within the next 5 years, you're going to be able to do just about anything, create just about anything by like typing in a 3 sentence prompt into an AI tool, and it's like what is going on?
Yeah,
And that's what I say is like we could very well be alive for both the invention of the iPhone and the end of like the human dominant era,
yeah.
which is like
Special
a scary way to say it, but
special
I
times.
100%,
Very special
100%.
times.
And this time in history, I think is going to be a pretty significant one. And it's like I don't know if you saw, I had a LinkedIn post a couple days ago, and I'd have to look at it to quote it directly, but it's something like over the last 9 or 10 generations, there are something like 4,096 ancestors that have had to live the lives that they lived and overcome the challenges that they overcame to get each and every one of us to where we're at now and the opportunities we get to have now. And since whether it's a positive opportunity or whether it's a responsibility or a burden we must bear, or however you want to look at it, this is going to be a time of incredible transformation. And I think it's like if you really sit down for a second and think about like how much heartbreak and sacrifice and dedication and pain, and accomplishments and all of the things that make up this experience, all of those people had to go through just to get you to the spot where you're at right now. It's like I don't know how you could look at your life and not think that you have a responsibility to continue that legacy and try to do everything that you can to make it better for to be one of those 4,096 people for somebody 9 generations from now.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Um, and so it's really that's kind of what drives me and what motivates me. Um, so yeah, that's my TED talk.
yeah. No, that's a beautiful TED talk. I like that. And I think a lot of what I heard from that is a lot of, and honestly, everything you've said on this call so far is, I feel like you have a really good perspective on things of just, you have your perspective and you try to do everything you can to understand things from that perspective. And you understand, that's where you are, and what your role is in what you're doing. And I think that's something that is really important and not talked about enough, is just understanding that, like, you can have any perspective you want. You can look at something from any angle. There's no limit to that. And it's just, like you were saying, we were talking earlier, there's not a whole lot of people, at least that we have found, as I have found, to connect with our age on these kinds of topics. And it's just, having that perspective at a certain age, I think, is really interesting. And understanding, being able to take a step back and say, okay, this whole AI thing seems important. I'm going to dive headfirst into this and figure it out. That's a unique perspective, I would say, at our age, to have that realization and go for it. I think that's unique, and I think that's really cool that you have that, what's the word I'm looking for? That vision, almost, to see that in the future and go after it. So I think
Mm.
that's awesome. I do have a question for you, totally outside of, no, not totally outside of. You mentioned you were a sci-fi kid, all into the science. What was it? Was it Star Wars? Was it Star Trek? What was your go-to?
I mean, I'm a Harry Potter man through and through,
Oh,
first of
Harry
all.
Potter. Okay. Okay.
I mean, I can spit off some Harry Potter quotes, but that was probably my fantasy series, like, nerdy thing. I was into Star Wars and all that, but I mean, I don't know. I've always I say I was a tech kid, a sci-fi kid. I don't want to, like, put myself in that box because I was interested in that kind of thing, and I was super into space and technology and all that. But then also I tried to. I mean, I think again it goes back to, like, how I was raised. Like, I always tried to, if you will, like, be a jack of all trades, and
Nice.
just kind. There you
That
go.
that should be your LinkedIn bio. Jack of all trades.
um, but I mean, it's true. Like, I think that, like, balance, like, that's such an overplayed word, is balance, but, like, trying to develop yourself in a holistic way, other than just, I think people get so zoned into one lane sometimes, and then they forget how to see outside of that. Um, and so it's been definitely a small part in what's made me who I am.
Yeah. So I get Gryffindor vibes from you. Is that accurate? What would you say?
If you would have asked me when I was a kid, I would have said Slytherin, but I think I've
Okay.
moved over to the light side, and I think I'm a Gryffindor now.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. No, I Slytherin was always the cool one. I'll be honest, I didn't get super into Harry Potter. I've
Mm,
seen a lot of the movies, but I was more like, I got really into Lord of the Rings, weirdly
mm.
enough. That's like my go-to, is more the fantasy stuff, but I need to watch all the Harry Potter movies.
Oh,
I
it's
should
fun.
do
I do it,
that.
like, once a year. I always do it, like, in between Halloween and Christmas sometime. It's the best time to watch them.
Oh yeah, that would be a good time. They're kind of Halloween-ish movies to me. Like, I could,
Mhm.
the music and everything. That's kind of the same,
Oh, it
similar.
fits the vibe 100%. You gotta try
Yeah,
it. Light
yeah.
light a little scented candle,
There you
turn on some
go.
Harry Potter. Oh, yeah.
That'd be great. All right,
Ultimate relaxation.
perfect. I'm gonna have to do that. I know. Also, you mentioned being a jack of all trades, and I know you said fitness is something that's super important to you. Um, Running. Talk to me about running, because first of all, running is something I got into during my college times. I tried to run a lot more. I was never into it. I don't even think I could have probably completed 1 mile 4 years ago without passing out. And I got to the point where I ran a marathon a few years ago. 2021, fall of 2021, I ran my first marathon. Slow. I don't want to talk about numbers, at least on my end, because it was very slow. Definitely not a natural runner, but I've seen things you've posted of your times, and I think you ran a half marathon at, like, what, a 7:20 pace or something in there. I thought I saw that
Uh,
on.
my most uh my most recent one was 131 something, I think, or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what the pace comes out to for that, but um but yeah, running. I mean, running has been a huge part of my family and a huge part of me ever since I was very, very young. First of all, congrats on the marathon, dude. Because I remember because you weren't. I mean, I don't think I ever heard or saw or anything with you running until we left high school, and running can be a really tough thing for some people to get into because you kind of can develop the mentality like, oh, I'm not a runner, I'm not built for running, I'm not a cardio guy, I just like to lift weights or
Yeah.
whatever, and
That was me. That's where I
literally,
was. Yeah.
that's where
Yeah.
I fit because I think I remember you lifted weights and stuff in somewhat in high school, right? And or
Yeah.
near the back half, and then at least,
Yep.
and then into college. But yeah, my grandpa, he was a big runner, and he actually was a co-founder of the St. Louis Track Club,
Oh, wow.
and he was a big marathoner, and kind of I draw a lot of my running inspiration from him. He was a football player in college and had that exact same mindset like we were just talking about, and then he went to go study to be an accountant and gained a bunch of weight, got into smoking cigarettes quite a bit, and kind of was in a valley in his life. And then he found running, and long story short, he ended up running Boston and having an insanely successful running career.
Wow.
He never ran. He ran like I don't know the exact number, but like over 50 marathons, and he never ran a marathon in slower than 3 hours. So I've only run one marathon, and I know you have as well. And so we don't have to talk about our numbers for the full marathon because mine was very slow as well. Um, but that's just like some like thinking about that when I'm 2 miles into a 4 mile run, and I'm like, oh, my hip kind of hurts, and I'm
Yeah.
and
Start
it's like,
complaining.
and then my dad was the same way. Like he's run Boston and um, was a big soccer player, and fitness was always a big part of his life. And so from a very young age, um, I would say, running with the heavy encouragement of my parents, just to phrase it like that. And at the time, I probably like cried walking out the door, but looking back, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I think it did so much for me in I guess like developing grit moving forward, and just like learning how to be comfortable with the uncomfortable and just kind of embracing the suck.
Yeah.
And that's such a skill that I think is more and more rare as time goes on, as we just have access to like infinite dopamine all the time. Um,
Yes.
and I think that running is one of the best sports just because it goes so much beyond like the physical benefits, right? Like of course, it's going to help you like improve your cardiovascular endurance and help you keep some lbs off or whatever, but it's also like for me it's very much like a meditative time. It's one of the only times in the day that I am not like don't have access to this and like
Yeah.
looking at my phone or whatever, and or checking social media or checking a text or a call or whatever, and I'm just in my zone in my own head for an hour, and I have some of my best thoughts or my best ideas just 4 miles into a 6 mile run or whatever. um, and so yeah, that's a long answer, I know, but that's
Yeah.
kind of the backstory there.
No, I think everything you just said is what led me into it was the mental side and realizing the dopamine you get after a 4 mile struggle is not even comparable to the little hits you get from Instagram likes or junk food, whatever it may be. Those
When
easy
you
hits.
DoorDash your canes or whatever, and it's
Yes, yeah, yeah. The
yeah.
easy stuff. It's such a different feeling, and it's almost. And I'm not necessarily like a religious guy or anything, but it's almost a spiritual feeling of accomplishing that. I mean, I remember, like I said, 1 mile was impossible in my head. I mean, that was something I could never do. And then getting to the point where I was doing 6 miles, 8 miles at a time, and it was just like I didn't think this was even possible, and now it's not only possible but enjoyable. And it's just pushing through. And I don't want to just repeat everything you just said, but the developing that grit and understanding, uncomfortable things are important and all that stuff. I think it's super important. And I think also developing a healthy social media algorithm can help with that too. I know, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever you're on, those algorithms are very tuned in to what you are interested in. And I think, obviously that can be a negative thing, but I think you can also utilize that. I know I made an effort to follow and engage with people that are healthy, whether it's, I don't know if you're familiar with the Goggins and
Oh
all.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I love
I've
that
read his
guy.
book. Yeah,
Yeah. Yep. Great
yeah.
book. All that stuff. That can be so beneficial for mental health. Whether it's just following those things alone can get you out the door and get you doing a half mile, if that's all it is, or even just walking, swimming, whatever it is. Just some sort of mental, physical time to yourself is just so important. I can't stress enough, just from my personal experience and from what it sounds like you as well. It's just so crucial to everything you do.
100%. Yeah, and I'll give another quick plug too. If you're like sitting here listening and you're one of those people where it's like, oh, I'll never be a runner. Like I'm not a cardio person. Just like kind of like what we were talking about. I would say go on Google and look up Hal Higdon, and he has something called a 30 for 30 plan, or I think that's what it's called. And it's literally just like, long story short, it's like 30 days in a row of just some kind of movement, whether you're walking 1 mile an hour or doing a slow jog or some hybrid combination. And I'm not sure if you knew this, but like we mentioned, I had a lot of fun in school and too much fun, and as well as it was kind of like a dark time for my family in between like my senior year of high school through sophomore, junior year of college, and I made a lot of poor choices and gained a bunch of weight. I ended up at my heaviest, I was 258 with
Wow.
almost almost none of that being muscle, and
I did
I
not
had
know
grown up.
that.
Yeah, I had grown up a very like thin kid and like very athletic and kind of. I mean, I had very I don't want to say I had very strict parents because I feel like strict is not the best descriptor, but I had parents that were always pushing me and always, wanting me to be the best version of myself. And I think once I tasted freedom at Alabama, like quite literally like unlimited freedom, it was just like, let me try out this lifestyle of like, I'm going
Right.
to drink when I want to, and I'm going to eat what I want to when I want to, and I'm going to go to bed when I want to. And I ended up in a really dark place really quickly. Um, and then that's actually, I started that 30 for 30 plan December of 2020, so just about when I applied for my first Walmart internship.
Yeah.
And I think it was like 3 or 4 months later, I was down like 35, 40 pounds. And I literally just did the 30 for 30 plan, like started waking up at the same time every day, started eating a moderately healthy breakfast, I'd say, every day. And then like was just a little bit more mindful about what I ate and how much I drank. And like it was kind of like one of those like disappear for 6 months things that
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
yeah. And within a year or two, it's like I'm back on my back to my normal self and running halves and got that full marathon in and the strength side of things has never been my strong suit, but over the last year or two, it's something that I've slowly kind of kicked up, and
Sure.
I'm looking to kind of grow in that area of my life as well. But it kind of just, I wanted to give that plug because it's like you can be that cardio fit person at different points in your life, and you can not be at different points of your life. And like, no matter where you're at, it's never too late to make the decision that you want to be something better.
Definitely. Peaks and valleys. It's never a flat experience. And what was that again? You said 30 by 30 by who? Is Hal
I bel
Higdon?
Hal Higdon, so it's HAL space Higdon, and I believe it's called like the 30 for 30 plan. But it's a 30-day plan, and then he kind of I think has some recommendations on his site on where you can take that next, whether you want to do like a 5K plan or whatever it may be, and then
Nice.
for every like race distance that you might want to do. So even if you're already a runner or already have some base level of cardio fitness, he has plans that you can access for free on his site that I for almost every race distance there's like a novice, an intermediate, and an expert kind of thing. So you can find really good plans that that you can find to fit your needs.
Nice. Good to know.
And then on top of that too, I mean, I ChatGPT. If you have ChatGPT 4, first of all, if you're not paying for and using ChatGPT 4, like the premium version of ChatGPT, it's like $20 a month, and like I think like a monkey could figure out how to extract $20 a month worth of value out of that thing. So like that's my like you gotta get ChatGPT Plus. You gotta get because it gives you access to ChatGPT 4 instead of 3.5. So it'll be like the most advanced algorithm with the highest degree of logic. So
Sure.
you're going to be receiving the best possible information. And I use that thing. I mean, that's probably a separate conversation. We'll have to sit down. But I mean, I use that thing. It's my nutritionist, it's my fitness coach, it generates my schedule every day. It has all my goals. I do my weekly financial review in it. It helps me generate ideas for social media posts. Um, it helped me build out my LinkedIn. It helped me redo my resume. Things like that.
All all the above.
Like literally, yeah. There's not a day that goes by that I don't use it. And I've talked to people about this, and they're like, so basically, like when I'm talking to you, like I'm not even talking to you. I'm just talking to ChatGPT. And I'm like, okay. They're like, you're letting like a AI run your life. And I'm like, well, like
It's
kind
optimizing.
of true, but the fact is like I'm inputting my goals and my values and the things that I want to do for that day, and it's helping me rearrange tasks or optimize for the things that I've told it to optimize for. And I
Right.
say like, if you don't think that AI algorithms are in some way running your life as well, even if you've never put anything into ChatGPT, you're very wrong. It's like kind of like what you talked about with like curating your social media feed, right?
Yeah.
It's like and that's like a way that you can kind of tailor what you're seeing and what's driving influence onto you, but up until now, up until the AI systems were open to the public, you didn't have total customization of what that little box in your hand was influencing your decisions and your purchases and things like that on and now you have I don't want to say total control but it's pretty miraculous what levers you're able to pull with that thing to drive productivity and growth in your life both personally and professionally if you learn how to use it and learn how to manipulate the machine.
Definitely. Definitely. And I think you're spot on. That should be a whole nother conversation episode that we should dive into that stuff because that sounds pretty cool. I'm interested to learn more about how you're doing that because I would like to implement that stuff myself. I haven't used it for the extent to what it sounds like you're using it for. So I'm interested to learn more about that.
I'm definitely psychotic about it. So like I'm not. I bet there's not many people who are doing it to the same extent as I am. But yeah, it's so awesome, man. And once you have a few more guests on here, and once your subscriber count is like 10 million in a couple
Yeah.
weeks, um,
Yes.
and yeah, I gotta plug my boy Chase here. Like the video, subscribe, all that nonsense. But
All the above.
give my boy some love, and I'd love to come back another time, and whatever the demand is for what people want to hear us talk about, I'm happy to fill it.
Awesome. And where can people find your stuff? Anything you want to plug? Anything like that?
Yeah, so I obviously my socials, which we'll link in the description, um, and then right now we didn't even talk about this, but I'm building a startup, sort of at the intersection of emerging tech, AI, e-learning, and professional development. So more information is going to be out on that fairly shortly. I'm actually meeting with my web developer and co-founder tomorrow to flesh that out a little bit more. But on top of that, I'm starting a YouTube channel, and my first video is going to be out here in the next couple of weeks. So I'll make sure to plug that
Yeah.
as well. And then I'm building out sort of like a landing page where people can access all of my content, blog posts, eventually paid courses, things like that, email newsletter. So it's all in the works. But I'll make sure to send you over whatever resources I can, so you can go ahead and link in the description of the video.
Perfect. We'll get it all out there, and we'll hop back on a call again and talk more in depth on all kinds of stuff you got going on. So awesome.
Uh, Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Chasing Possible podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, be sure to follow the show so you can stay up to date on all of our new episodes. Also, if you found this episode interesting or you learned something new, be sure to give the show a 5-star rating. If you're listening or watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. I'll see you in the next one.